this lesson, I'm going to talk a little bit about one of my favorite sounds, which is combining major and minor pentatonic. And if you want to download the example that I just played, you can go to the link below or the link on screen to sign up for my mailing list and download a PDF with a transcription of that example. So I'm in drop D, which means I've just taken the low E string and dropped it a whole step to D, which makes playing the alternating thumb style in D a lot easier. So the thumb is alternating between the 6th string, 4th string, 5th string, 4th string. And occasionally playing a little bass run as an answer. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So the thumb is pretty much doing the same thing, but the third fret on the low string is adding in the flat third with maybe a bit of a bend, and then you're landing on the root. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and then hitting the 6th string again, and then the upper root. So on top, I'm playing out of a couple of, well, 3 positions basically. So there's the 5th and the 6th and the root and the 2nd and the flat third of the 3rd of D. And then here we can get the 6th and the root and the flat third of D. And then here we can get the root, the flat third, the 4th, the 5th, the 6th, and possibly the flat 7. So we've got, what we've got here, flat third and 5th, that's minor pentatonic, but then the 6th gives you that brighter major pentatonic sound. And that's really the combination that we're using here, is that combination of the flat third and the major 6th. And it just brightens things up, and it makes things sound a little more major, but you still got that funky flat third in there, keeping things sounding bluesy. So this is just a specific set of licks worked out over the alternating thumb, but the idea is once you get familiar with moving around between these 3 positions, you can start to improvise using some of those moves. But so specifically, starts on the downbeat, flat third to 5th, flat third to 6th, and then 6th to flat third, so flat third 2nd to root, and then answered with more of that position, 6th to root to flat third. And then repeat the first phrase in this particular example. And then answer with a longer lick. So 6, flat third, use the open string for the 2nd, to the 5th, to the root, to the 6th, on the open B string, and then the root. So the whole example forms a series of call and response. We've got, and then that it gets answered with, or you can really think of that as all one phrase, which then gets answered with this more ascending phrase. And then you repeat the first phrase, and then answer with a longer phrase. So just that kind of shape and that structure is another thing that you can take out of the example and use as kind of a framework for improvising. The idea that you're going to build things up into phrases. There's one, and then leave a little space at the end for that bass fill, and then repeat. And then answer with something more elaborate. And the whole idea that you can use repetition in improvising is a really interesting one, I think, because I know when I was learning to improvise at first, and always still learning, but the idea is like, well, you're making stuff up. Everything's got to be different every time, and it's like, actually, no. Like, you can use a certain amount of repetition as a springboard, so that if you have a certain phrase, answer it one way, then repeat it with a variation maybe, and then come up with another way to answer the whole thing. And so that is a good way to sort of ease your way in, because then you can look at it in terms of something you can actually practice. You can practice improvising by saying, okay, I'm going to use this as my kickoff phrase. And then how am I going to answer it? Well, maybe you come up with 2 or 3 different ways to answer it. How can you answer it down in this position? Okay, maybe that's one way. How can you answer it in this position? How can you answer it up here? Maybe like that. And so now you've got 3 answers. So So you've got these kind of cones to run around. You're always going to play this lick. And then in between, you're going to play first, like specific licks, maybe just a pair of licks you've worked out, like in the example I played at the beginning. Then maybe you move on to where you play this opening lick, and then you answer it with a few different things you've worked out. And then from there, you can start to say, well, now I'm going to vary the beginning lick and play some set answers. And then eventually you get to the point where that sense of phrasing is really innate. And so when it becomes natural to think in terms of those call and response phrasings, that's when you start really improvising and just being able to play from phrase to phrase, knowing that you've got a vocabulary of stuff that will work. So and the more you practice playing that way, the more you hear that kind of phrasing when you listen to other musicians, and the more it just creates this feedback loop where you hear the way people phrase and you start to develop your own sense of phrasing, and the whole thing can kind of grow from there. So again, if you want to download the opening example, go to the link below or go to the link on screen, sign up for my mailing list, download the PDF, and I'll see you next time.